Welcome back to another Action Game Maker tutorial. Today we're going to go over resolution sizes. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so here we are in the chicken benchmark sample. And if I playtest this, I'll kind of show you what we're going to go over today. We can see that real quickly by default, this is a pretty small scene compared to its window size. Additionally, if I scale this, it follows it for a certain amount, but if I go more in, it starts to cut off the game. And so what options do we have for resolution, and what all do we need to think about when we change resolution? Because in PGM, there was a lot of changing. That's what this video is going to be about. All right, so all settings related to resolution is going to be in the project settings under display window. And there's going to be a lot of settings, especially when we go to the advanced features. But I'm going to make this super easy and focus on the things that you need to worry about. I'll try to explain most things, but be very detailed in the things that you need to know. All right, so the first thing is you need to know the width and the height. All right, so this is pretty general. PGM, we would do this as well. We would pick an aspect ratio. You could set a custom one. This is where you would do your 320 by 180, or you would do your 640 by 360. Generally, sometimes I like to stick with 1280 by 720. Now, you can see while I'm setting this, you can see this purple box, kind of because my window is pretty small. You can see this purple box adjusting. If I went back to 640 by 360, you can see we can't see that purple line anymore. And then if we go up again, we can see it adjusting. So the cool thing is that when you're setting this, it's actually changing the camera everywhere you have it, basically. And the nice thing about that compared to PGM is that it's automatically done for you. In PGM, if you were to change your resolution mid-project, you would have to go back to every scene and change the camera back to that resolution. You'd have to customize it to that resolution. This one automatically does it. So you want to change resolution mid-project, go for it. You might have to set up your scenes differently, whatever, but you're not going to have to go through each scene's camera and change them, which is really nice. All right, so while we're sticking with this width and height concept, there is another option we can do where we can go to this advanced settings and turn it on, and we can come down here and we can have a override width and height. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to do something like we would do in PGM, where we would have a low resolution, but then we would enlarge the display. And in PGM, you would do it by times 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all that stuff. But what it was doing is it was taking this number, timesing it by 4, taking this number, timesing it by 4, and that was going to be the enlarged window of it. So really, our resolution was 320 by 180, but the window size was going to be a bigger 1280 by 720. And so that's how we got that. So we can do the same thing in Action Game Maker by giving a viewport of a lower one. So this would be the exact same setup as I have in the PGM game right there. And then we would go to the Windows override and we would say we want this to be 1280 by 720. And so then that would give us that enlarged. Now, it's not going to work right off the bat. I want to show you that it's just going to be the same right now. Even though the window's smaller and everything, it's still going to be the same. And the reason why is because of our mode. All right. So let's go back to the project settings and let's scroll down here. Now, the mode does not need advanced settings, so I'll just turn that off just so you can know what is advanced and what's not. And we can see this stretch mode right here. And right now it's disabled, meaning that that's why I can make that screen really lower and it's not moving the entire screen with it. And so in order to make this work with the overridden window and the lower resolution, I'm going to click on viewport right here. And then we're going to close and playtest this. And we will see that we will now have the same effect that PGM would have if you had a low resolution and enlarged it. All right. This is how you make that kind of a game. And then you can scroll it like this and you'll notice something different this time. This time it goes with the size and it scales it accordingly. Now this one is set to fractional. Okay. So it scales as best as it can, but it's going to be fractional pixels. Okay. Now PGM also had this right here. It was adjust screen magnifier by window size. And so it would have an integer option or proportional to the magnified displayed. All right. So it had this option as well. AGM has this option. If we go to the project settings and we go to the scale mode right here, we can say integer or fractional. Fractional was kind of keeping it close, but you're going to have the fractional pixels. If we click on integer, then we're going to have, it's going to lock it at that specific resolution, and it will not go smaller or bigger unless it can hold it. So you can see that instantly it went to a smaller one that fits, and then it's going to go to a smaller one that fits, and it's going to keep your pixels nice and crisp. So you will need to mess with that. Now there is a certain point of no return, obviously, and I think the fractional one will try to even preserve the point of no return. Let's try that again. So there will be a little caveat there, but who's going to have a window that small? I don't know. Even a phone is bigger than that. So let's try this right here. It's going to keep it as best as it can, as long as it can, and you can see it can go really small. So yeah, the fractional is going to be the one that tries to maintain it the most. So one thing, I'll go back to project settings. Now, along with viewport, there's also a canvas item. Now, this does the same thing as viewport, really. There might be a little difference here, but if you hover over this, you can see that right here on the canvas item, it says recommended for most games that don't use pixel art aesthetic. So there is an interesting thing here that happens with how it scales and things. It can make the pixels resulting in some artifacts. So I've always just used viewport. However, there might be a certain case for canvas items. They kind of do the same thing from what I see, though. They might just scale a little differently, and that's why you get the artifacts and the canvas items. And in the viewport, I've just kind of always stuck with viewport. Now, real quick, I'll just explain these aspects. Right here we have keep, and that is the reason why it's able to scale with the window size as we try to change it, is because it's trying to keep the aspect. If we just say ignore and we go to close and playtest this, we'll see how it behaves, and it's not usually what we want. So if we start to scroll it, you can see that it just ignores it. And so if you're on a mobile device, it will look like that. But if your landscape, it will look like that. You know, it goes depending on the window size itself. That's what it scales to, which isn't always, I mean, that's a cool effect right there, but not what we want for the actual player. So generally, I keep this on keep. However, you can keep the width only, you could keep the height only, and what that does is it just keeps that portion only. And then what this expand option here does, I'll show this one because it's a little interesting. And on those keep width and height, the opposite side is going to be doing what expand does, basically, where I can start to scale this out, and it's actually going to show more of the area. So this would be something that would be interesting for a mobile device, because you would either be seeing less or more depending on what you are. You know, so maybe you have a portrait mode game and this would be the better viewport for it. I don't know. Generally, what I stick to is the viewport, keep, and then fractional. If I really need the pixel art crispness, I'll do integer. So that's kind of my style. You can also have this scale right here. This scale is pretty, you just have to kind of play with it and see what it looks. So for example, if I do a scale of 2 and I play test this, the camera is going to be either more in or out. I can't remember. I think it was opposite. Okay, so it is more in. So you're scaling it in. So it just kind of is interesting there. Now, this can be another way that you can do the whole window override right here. So for example, I could just turn these off and I could turn this to 1280 by 720. And then this could be we could try to attempt to do the scale right here. However, this is maybe where I was getting confused, where it feels like I can't get the right, it's not the same values or something. And so anyway, if I do a scale of 3, it would be like this. And let's see, the scale right here is 4. So let's do a scale of 4. And maybe I'm wrong with all of this and I just gave up early. But let's see, a scale of 4 is going to give me, yeah, it's going to give me about that same look. Now let's see how it scales with this. So it does scale. Okay. So I don't know what was going on in my other tests here, but I guess there's a few ways that you can do it. You can either use this scale, which would be the same as this enlarged display, and then have the set viewport right here, or you can override the width and set this as the low res portion of it. So yeah, I guess maybe that's what, and maybe what it was is our cameras in one of the games is zoomed in by default. And so maybe this was not playing well with that, and maybe that's why I gave up on this. All right, so let's go back to advanced settings here, turn that off, and just look at some of the other things that we have. So the first thing we have is mode, and we have windowed, minimize, maximized, full screen, exclusive screen. Okay, so we can make sense of most of these, but I am going to show that the difference between full screen and exclusive full screen, when you're letting the player choose whether their game is full screen or not in the game itself, you want to use exclusive full screen. And when you're play testing, if you want to play test, you would use full screen. So if you're wanting to play test with full screen, you would use this one. But in the actual game build, you're going to want exclusive full screen. There's something with, for one, I know full screen this way has borders. I can kind of show you this, I think. If I play test this with full screen on, we can see that there, you should see, I can't see it because my OBS has these borders, but you might see borders, gray borders around the sides of my screen. So then if I go to exclusive, you shouldn't see those borders. So exclusive, you can see that it took the focus away from even my OBS. So I can't even see the borders anymore around my screen. And so, yeah, I can't remember what the problem was, but some people were saying that exclusive full screen, it might not take when you're play testing. And so you'd have to come down here and click it to show it again or something like that. But yeah, make sure exclusive full screen is what you're using for your players though. That's the important part right there. Now you can have some positioning things. You can have an absolute position you want it in, and then you can specify the X and the Y, or you could do it at the center, which is by default, and you can have it at the center of another screen if you want the playtest to show up on your other monitor. And then you can do center of where the mouse pointer is. And so this would be useful. You could just throw your mouse on another screen, start it, you know that that's where it's going to go, or where the keyboard focus is. So that's pretty self-explanatory. The initial screen is just what screen is your main screen. You can just click up for the monitors that you have on that. Now, borderless just makes your windowed mode not have any borders on it. I think we can see this in a playtest here. Yeah, you can see there's no borders, but then there's also no X to click off of. So it's completely borderless. I'm just going to Alt F4 to get out of there. And now let's go back to advanced settings real quick, see if there's anything more that's interesting here. This one's interesting, always on top. This is kind of useful when you're debugging. You can have that selected, and when you're playtesting, the window will always stay on top, meaning that if I was to click on the editor, like I am now, normally this would go in the back, and then the editor would pop forward. So this is good for like testing when I want to go to remote, see the remote scene right now, see what the things are doing here. And so, yeah, basically you can just kind of see what's going on. So if we go back, we can turn that off because sometimes that gets annoying, especially I notice on my laptop, which has a lower resolution, that gets kind of annoying when it's left on top and I can't see anything. There's some things right here you can worry about. And then the only real other thing that I worry about in here is the VSync mode disabled. Heard if you're having issues, you can go to like a mailbox or adaptive and all these things, or you could disable it completely. Again, this is something that you should have your players be setting in their options menu, which in the Baz-a-lot quest sample, I have a menu that goes over disabling, enabling it. And so, yeah, these are basically your options for resolution. You have some advanced settings that you can set, but the most typical thing that you need to keep in mind is that you have the viewport, you have the mode, so this is the viewport size, you have the mode, which for pixel art games, I would stick with viewport, and then you have the scale, or you can set the override, depending on how you want to do it. The last thing that I will go over is there is some pixel snapping options. So if you type in pixel here, and you go to, let's see here, it's under 2D, so rendering 2D, there is snap 2D transform to pixel, and then snap 2D vertices to pixel. So if you are having issues, so you can see here it says, if true, canvas item nodes will internally snap to full pixels. So the other thing is this vertices right here. And this is also to be used, it says primarily for pixel art. It says for low resolution pixel art games. But down here at the bottom it says it is not recommended to use this setting together with the 2D transform. So what I would do is I would just try both of these settings and see which one fits your game better if you want. I actually end up not using any of them, but I do know that some people really want that crisp pixel art look, and so you do have these options available. I wanted to let you know about them. And hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions, you can comment below, go to the official forums Discord. We'll get you figured out. That said, I'll see you in the next video.